We are here on Change and Triumph with Tené Williams, moi, and my brother, Mr. Hashim Muhammad, a civil engineer and just one of the most respected people I have ever met. Honestly, because I've known him his whole life, and I am really excited to introduce him to the world. And so we're going to be just having an amazing conversation about his amazing career, his children, and how he views God in the light of his career. Mr. Muhammad, I guess, may I call you Hashim?
Hashim is actually preferred. Yes.
Okay. So you describe yourself as an outlier, a Black engineer from humble beginnings who successfully navigated both the public and private sectors while raising a family. So, I mean, that is just phenomenal in itself. You mentioned that your career journey is defined by a very specific variable. And that variable is, how has your relationship with God served as the ultimate contributing factor to your success and in the sciences?
Well, thank you for that question today. It's glad to be able to join you. Just to give that question some context, actually, really, first part is I am your younger brother. That's an important contextual element of there.
I just want you to know, I always thought my two younger brothers were my older brother.
We've had those moments. Another part of that context, as far as like a variable, I think I mentioned that variable. My wife in 2021, she finished her own doctorate in urban education, and of course, as her husband, for 25 years, I'm a springboard. Her thinking and her process when she did her study, she basically did a quantitative study. And her study was in her passion as far as what are the factors that affect Black and Latino men to pursuing um, high school, college. There's not many Black men that actually go to those levels of education as compared to Black women, as compared to counterparts of white men. So identifying the variables that actually inspire that remnant, you can lock in and say, okay, what do we need to do? What do we need to build on so that we can encourage the next generation so that that remnant builds to an equal status of the other, or even just at least has a strong stance as far as the infrastructure that we built for them. Well, there was a lot of areas that she studied based on New York State education resources and such, New York State and the nation's educational resources. But the variables that she locked in and found that were important in their success was a category called student level, which had to do with the students' demographics, a students' attitude, their family, how they encourage them, where they're from, how they respond to education, how they bring them up in those things, and how the school responds to education as far as like how they encourage the students as far as what they're doing. She finished her doctorate, and being that I graduated college, she asked me and a few other gentlemen to actually write a paper responding to her variables. And while I'm writing and everything, I'm like, yeah, this I can see how this worked and how my family worked and how my counselors worked, and I can identify them. But there's something else. And that something else was not necessarily attributed to any of those things. And I had to like come to grips with that, acknowledge that, you know what, God, I'm going to say God. And what I'm saying when I say God is that I had to acknowledge that there was an outside entity, outside time and space, all the realm that we call reality, uh, that I can turn around and say, you know what, that wasn't me.
Mm.
And you know what, there's something else going on, and it's something that's promoting me. I have to do the work, but it's something that's promoting me to push forward towards the work that I can't say is me. I can't say is the things around me, but I have to attribute and acknowledge God as far as like the variable that, you know what, that this was there.
So your higher power, you feel, is responsible for leading you down that path.
It was my choice to respond to it. And that's actually a lot of our choices. You have a choice to respond to it or not. I heard a comedian say God is like your GPS. You can be traveling on a road and you can make a wrong turn. The GPS is not going to say stop. the GPS is going to recalculate, okay, this is where you need to go. But it's up to you to make those turns. It'll keep recalculating, but sooner or later, you're going to get to making left turns and wrong turns the way you want and get further away from what God really wanted you to be, or make the turns that God wants you to make, and then get there with a more peaceful situation. I think that was a great analogy. That the comedian was Michael Jr. So I want to give him credit for that.
I love that analogy. That analogy is phenomenal. It's right on. It's like, I meant to go here, or
Yeah,
God meant you to go here, and you're just on this road, but you're making your
you're putting
own
in the fuel.
right.
You're
That
doing
is
all those things, but if you
right.
got to keep recalculating, it's on
That
you.
is, and you can hit a dead end. I love that analogy. You mentioned your wife. Your wife has been with you in this journey from college. Do you mind sharing a little bit about your story? I mean, you guys just celebrated your 25-year anniversary. I'd
Yeah,
say that definitely has something to do with the success you've had as well.
the woman I call my wife was on the GPS. She was definitely there on the GPS. I mean, how we met and everything, it was crazy. I had transferred from one college to a larger university to basically pick up a major, catch back up, and go to college to take care of the business God gave me. My other college, I was with girls, drinking, whatever. When I got to and transferred, I had the opportunity. I was like, I'm going to be about this business. I had learned, I think, from a preacher relaying Adam and Eve. He said before he gave him Eve, he first gave Adam a job. And
Hmm,
if I'm going to have a wife, and I was like, nah, never mind the girls. Let me find out what I need to do. So put down on the career path I'm going for first. Worry about the girls later. I went to school with that in mind. We were friends. We met in a Bible study, common friend, what have you. It's a touching story. We became best friends. I would even talk to her about girls I was thinking about and dating, and she would talk to me about that, and it was like, "Yeah, whatever." And it was like a homie love a friend moment. It was just like it's a long story, but in short, we became friends. Yeah, I decided, you know what, we should be more, and it was like she agreed. We were best friends. We and then we kissed in 1999, and
okay.
we weren't dating for long. In 97 we met. 99 we did kiss. We were friends, and then I asked her to marry me at the end of 99. New Year's Eve 1999. It was like Y2K. Everybody's like freaking out that the computer's gonna shut down and everything. I remember we were sitting
That's
in a
right.
restaurant, and I was like, "You know what?" I kneeled down. I was like, "You know what? I don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow because it was New Year's Eve, 99. I don't know
Mm.
what's gonna happen tomorrow, but I know I want you with my in my tomorrows."
Oh,
Um, she said yes, and then we got married, and then it was like, yeah.
wow.
And I
Wow.
liked her. We were friends. Part of the reason we were friends, we also we both believed in God, but she just also believed that education was a part of what God created, and that knowledge is something that God. One of her pet peeves she can't stand from a long time is when she hears the word secular education from the pulpit. It's like, yeah,
Interesting.
secularism was a thing back then. It was like, but what is used now and how it's used, and very small, especially in smaller churches, to demonize knowledge that's outside of church knowledge. It's like she's like, don't think you understand? But yeah, that's my boo, and yeah, we're on the same wavelength, and she's been part of like this journey.
She's been on the GPS. She was
He
she
was
was
on the
part of the
GPS.
GPS,
Yeah,
and
she was.
I can attest to she was definitely on the GPSs. So, she is just phenomenal, and both of you have this huge, uh commitment to education and directing children. I mean, you were a big part of your children's lives in just gearing them down the path of education to where all three of your munchkins have their associates when they graduated
Yeah.
high school.
Yes.
And you're also a big proponent on public schools. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
That actually goes back to first having our first child. We were both still in college when we got married. And we sat down and we said, "How are we gonna raise our family?" We actually had a conversation, we talked. Lisa, she was in private school. Her parents had paid for private school and everything, and she felt like it was a waste of money for them. And I was like, "Yeah, I went to public school. I think I turned out okay, yeah." So we were like from there, "Okay, we're going to do public school. We're not gonna waste our money on private school." She was actually graduating with early childhood, and so she was actually doing the research already, and she said one thing that they've already found is that parents who are involved in their child's education, they are more successful. Like parental involvement means a lot. So from sitting down, we were going to be the bake sale, the PTA. We were going to be involved, and it was actually something I agreed to. It was like we're going to be in there, and I think that was the best decision because that allowed us also to be in the know, especially with those parents that, okay, hey, we doing this. It turns out you can be in a school with hundreds and thousands of kids, but the PTA parent group is a smaller group. And then there's that niche group, that executive board group that's like, yo, let's get this done. Let's do this for our kids. Let's do this for our community. And so we were in that no. When it comes to the kids' associate degree, our son was in third grade. We're on SLT. Me and my wife were both on the SLT school leadership team for the public school that we were in, and another parent who was also on the PTA. She's like, "Yo, I found this school," and she said she found this school, and she's like, we were like, "Where's the school?" And then so we went to the school's open house. Our son is in third grade. He's
Wow.
just supposed to do open houses till fourth, fifth grade, whatever. It's like, yeah, let's go. So we went to the school in this high. It was a high school called again, it was college preparatory school. Big shout out. It's a junior high and college preparatory school. So it's a junior high and high school, but they ran a program such that the high school is a college preparatory, but the junior high is actually a high school preparatory school. So
Wow.
actually, if you can get into the school, they run it so that you starting to take high school classes in junior high, so that you can have the room to take college classes in high school. So it was like, yeah, you know what? We're doing that. And part of that also was that the program that they had was to get an associate's degree in high school. That's free to us. And if it
Uh,
is, and he can do it, and he can go on to college, then actually, if he can get an associate's degree, that's the first 2 years of college. Guess what?
that's
That's like
right.
a 2-year scholarship.
That's
So
right.
if I financially, it made sense that that's what we're going for. And that started from his 3rd grade class. It's like, we're gonna go
That's
for that.
amazing. You got it.
That's what
Got
he
it.
planned
Got
for.
it.
And it made sense because actually 3rd grade, 4th grade, that's when the kids start getting kinda a little crazy. And as far as raising kids, it becomes after 10 years old, we started seeing, okay, they wanna be independent. And it's something that parents have to, like, get a hold of, that their kids actually want to be adults. Eventually, they
Mm,
want to be adults. And so it was
right.
like, okay, they want to be adults, we want to prepare them to be adults, but if they're gonna have to make their own choices in life. But we wanna get them to a place where they can do what they want or do the things they think they need to do, but not be a burden on us. So an associate's degree in high school makes sense because 'cause they'll be able to get a job. If they don't wanna go to college, they don't have to. It's up to them. But we've put them in a place where they can go, and if they don't want to go, they're in a better place if they don't. So that was our motives and everything.
That's phenomenal. And going back to that study that Lisa did, I wonder if they had a similar point of view where parenting and togetherness with the marriage and education, and that's what really is contributing to the success of you and your family and being a Black man and have become a civil engineer for some of the top firms in the country. But before I talk about those amazing accolades, something happened when we were kids, and actually, I was not present. Do you remember that time when you figured out that there was something that you had to do and just changed your entire life? How old were you? What year was it? Tell us a little bit about that story.
So I tell this story, and I told the story to my kids, especially. I think it was 1989, 1990, before definitely fifth grade, maybe fifth or sixth grade. Seven brothers and sisters in one three-bedroom house. So there was three of us. I had two brothers, and then I had four sisters. They all slept in the same room,
Room and the girls' room.
boys' room and girls' room. We switched up sometimes, but the girls' room always was bigger. And so my mom, dad couldn't afford a lot. I'm gonna repeat Tupac. Although we had it rough, we always had enough. So it was all right. But we know how to pay for toilet paper with food stamps. We know how to get the roaches out of the kitchen. Um, I remember we used to actually like basically the lights would be off in the kitchen, and then the girls' room was on this side, the boys' room on that side. We all get together at the doorway, and we say, okay, as soon as you turn on the light, snuff them out, and then turn on the light, and all the kitchen. The roaches were on the floor of the kitchen in front of the stove. So we were the exterminators in the house. But it yeah,
But
mom and dad couldn't afford.
when you have that many
Yeah,
children,
the
I happen
exterminator.
to remember why probably in hindsight we had those issues because our sister used to eat food and then spit it into her clothes and put it in the laundry.
Who was doing that?
You didn't know
Okay,
about
don't
that?
tell no. Okay, okay. After the recording, just let me know. I just want to know. We had
Oh,
another
yes.
sister who used to blow her nose in the clothes. I remember seeing that. That's crazy. Who that was?
I don't know who that was.
But to say we didn't have enough. We was on welfare, what have you. So to make ends meet, our dad, rest in peace, he just celebrated his birthday the other day. He found a way to make money off the streets, and so there's always like, how do you find that hustle? So as black people, period, they know that they need another hustle. They need another way to make that dough so that they can fill in any gaps that's left in the family.
And that
So
would
the
be black
hustle,
people that are that would be black people that are uneducated per se, right? So, yeah, I guess it goes both ways. You could be educated or uneducated. Our dad, born in 1944, what did he have access to? He lived through the civil rights movement. He lived through having no access to education like you did.
right?
Wouldn't you agree?
I would agree. I no, actually, I don't agree. Because he
Okay.
actually said he dropped out at 6th grade, and he actually
Yes.
he actually he expressed a lot of times he knows his friends that actually did continue on the school and they're doing all right. And I think that was part of, well, his own mind. I don't want my children to do the same thing. So he would always tell us, get your education. He would always say,
Mhm.
get your education, get your education. You thought he was just like, okay, get your education, got it, go to school. But, I think just actually to the question that you asked me about as far as that, impactful moment, get your education. There was that time that made, a big impact on me when he said that to me. So while he's doing his hustle, just to fill in the gaps because he doesn't have the education or doesn't have the means to actually fill in the gaps in the traditional sense, we were selling bootleg videotapes.
What are those, bootleg videotapes? We gotta take them back because people today don't even know about bootleg VHS tapes in 1989.
It's bootlegging still exists.
Okay.
You can watch movies on the internet streaming that does and or in some other way, or find a way to do or get something that's you have to pay for and get it
Get a
cheaper.
subscription for free,
That's
right, through
that's all
some kind of
bootlegging. Yeah.
that's
So
bootlegging too,
VHS
yeah.
tapes. That's just the media that it used to be. Just like it used to be CDs for music. It wasn't streaming, it
That's
was
right.
CDs. And before CDs, it was
That's right.
tape decks. And before tape decks, it was 8 tracks.
That's
So
right.
that media of yesteryear for watching movies was VHS tapes. It's like a big cassette tape. It's very square. I don't want to describe it. We used to sell them in our neighborhood for, I think I remember we talking about it was like $20 or something like that,
15,
which
yeah,
was like the
15,
the price
$20.
of a movie times 3 or 4. Because basically you
That's
could
right.
sit down and watch it anytime, watch it for your whole family. So we sold it for that price.
So those videos would be of someone who went into the movie theater and recorded the latest movie.
Yes. And you could see the people walking at the bottom getting popcorn and
Yes, yes,
so
so crazy. So dad sold those.
she sold those. And when after a while, he recognized that he couldn't just do business in one place. So he had to move around. So in moving around, he actually found himself he was invited to some place to see and meet a buyer in that buyer's apartment. And that where we went, we carrying the tapes, me and my brother. So I'm carrying tapes, he's carrying tapes, my father's in the middle. And we go up the stairs. We're on Sugar Hill, somewhere around Edgecombe and 145th. I could recognize the neighborhood because we didn't live far from there. The pool was right there, Jackie Robinson pool. It's like, okay, I know where I am. It's good to have okay, this is where we are. We walk up the stairs, we go in the apartment, and then the door closes, and then the guy, the buyer, is like sitting on the couch and across, he's on the phone. We gotta wait for him to get off the phone. So we stand on the wall behind. And I'm looking around, the guy just closed the door. He had a Glock on. And it was like, snap. And then there was another guy, he had a Glock. And it was like, there was, and then I noticed a guy in front of me, he's on the phone. He's very slick guy, Puerto Rican, got the beard, curly hair, got
Okay.
a cell phone. Cell phone. This is 1989. It's a big phone, but literally he has an antenna coming out to here or someplace. And he's like, yeah, 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 blah blah blah, and it's like everybody. I'm trying to get a beeper. I can't even afford a beeper, and this guy's got the cell phone, and it's like this is money. So there was money that was there. There was, and I can tell because also there was also 2 girls that were cutting white powder on the table, and it was just like, "What are we doing here?" And I recognized it from the New York Undercover shows we used to watch, what have you. Like, what would Malik Yoba do in this situation? So I'm like looking around, like, okay, if the cops come in here, we gotta go. Like, so I'm looking around, like the front door, that's obviously blocked. The toilet, the bathroom is over there, but the girls are gonna run to flush the stuff down the toilet probably, like they did in one of the movies I watched. And then I turned my head to this one to the window. I seen the fire escape, and I remember the fire escape because I was like, okay, all these guys are heavy. If they go to the fire escape too, they're gonna run down because they're all heavy. But I'm gonna do that. I'm just gonna run up. The stairs should be clear, and then I'll go on the roof, and then I'll jump around on the rooftops to get away. Because you know what, I know how to do that. That's because of
So right
my
now you just think you're in New York undercover. You are
yeah, yeah, yeah. In my head, though, I was like, okay, my manhunt, cutting school and playing manhunt days in Dunbar projects. This is gonna work out. So we it's working out. But then also I noticed the guy who's cutting a brick, off of a brick, white, not white, green, and it was like a brick of weed. And he was shaving off the brick of weed, and like putting it into bags, and then measuring it and then putting it into a milk crate underneath the table. And he would measure it, take some out, measure it, put it in, and so he was measuring out. I couldn't tell like how many pounds was he measuring? Like, is it a half pound? Was it a pound? But he was definitely measuring out weed. And I remember staring at it and just like kind of trying to calculate, okay, how many pounds is that? That looks like dime bags. Like so the Ziploc he's putting this stuff in that maybe it fits like maybe 20 dime bags. Maybe this is like $200, and this is okay, $200. Like yeah, he's got like 10 bags in there. It's like $2,000 worth of product. He's got okay, just the brick of weed is at least 20 times that. So I'm doing the numbers in my head like really. So actually, where I was afraid the guns and this and that, I was just like at a peace there. I was at a peace
Interesting.
just doing the numbers, and I was just like,
Mm,
and it wasn't like a big thing. It was just like, yeah, I can do them. Blah 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 blah. Get. I was about to get on to distribution, but it was literally like my father. He must have noticed me at a daze, and he tilted down, and I felt him tilt down towards me because he was on my left, and I was like, I kind of came up, and he's like kneeling down. And he said, "Again, get your education," and I was
wow.
like, "Okay," and it was kind of like head front. What you paying attention to? That's not it. Whatever this is, that's not it. That did two things for me. One, it told me what he valued and what he respected value for. Remember, I told you he knew his friends and everything had gone on and did other things. I went with him to a funeral for his father. Uh, Me and Shabazz did, and he met some of those friends and everything that was there, and they were doing well. They had the kids there, and he's like, he wanted things for us that he could not provide for us. It's like he was disillusioned by the idea of black empowerment without
Mhm.
education, and that was an illusion, and he recognized the illusion, and I realized that that's what he's telling us. It's like, get your education wasn't just because he's just telling us to go to school. It's because he was correcting what he was disillusioned by. This is obviously not it, what he was doing, and he wanted us to do better than that, and he respected that, and he valued that for us, and so I was like, "Okay, if I wanna earn my father's respect, I need to listen and get my education." 2, it was like, "Get your education." I don't know why the word "your" just came out very pronounced, that it kinda, like, defined it as mine, like, this is something for me to get, this is mine. Not that it's owed to me, I have to work for it, but it's mine, I can get it. I have to earn it, but I can get it. And so I kinda took that from that last time he said, "Get your education," I was like, "Yeah, okay, let's do this."
You
And
know,
I kinda went from there from
it's so interesting the way you perceived that Black empowerment conversation that he
mm,
felt that he went into a direction that wasn't. I perceive it a little differently, and the way I've perceived that period of time, and this goes into how we both moved from being Muslim to Christianity. You know, I look at our dad's life like, okay, it was all about he was taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad that you should do for yourself. He came up during those Malcolm X days, those Martin Luther King days. And the choices, even though I know that, for instance, our uncles became millionaires who grew up in the same time period, but they're probably 10 years younger than him. So those and they did the education because our grandparents on our maternal side instilled education into those young Black men and made sure that they went to the best colleges and they went to, the top colleges, if I remember correctly, like MIT and, I
Cornell.
think one was Cornell
One went to Cornell.
University. Like Cornell, and so they went to those, excellent colleges. They did not go to the war, so they didn't go to the Vietnam War. However, the other Black men, that came up and our dad was an entrepreneur. He knew how to go out there. He made bracelets, through our childhood, he owned a grocery store, and so whenever I tell the story of my background, I go, "Hey, I come from an entrepreneurial family. I was working in our grocery store at 9 years old." So we had a grocery store. We had, I don't know if you remember the health food store at another period of time on Lenox Avenue. So we always had, like you said, it was rough, but it was enough. I didn't know there was something that I needed that I didn't have. I didn't know that that was a thing because in Harlem, I mean, I worked selling videotapes on 125th Street at 13
Mhm.
years old, making
Right, right, right.
$100 in a Saturday. So, making $100 on a Saturday, I could buy whatever sneakers I wanted to buy. I could go shopping. I could do whatever I want. As a teenager, I could, have whatever I wanted to have. And so I didn't know that we were lacking in anything. And in hindsight, seeing dad's hustle, I think that's what made me, because of course, me being the oldest, from those 7 children, it's like I'm got the most information from the entrepreneurial side, I feel. And you guys, you got this get your education conversation, which I never
No,
even
no, no.
heard.
That doesn't mean the hustle and entrepreneurial wasn't there either. Trust me,
Right,
that was there. That was definitely a part of.
right.
If I could just real quick, yeah, I knew the numbers, and yeah, I did well in school. Uh, but they sent me to when I came to high school, and what the counselors like again counseling, they put you towards a place where that they think would be best for you. So what I ended up going to was my first year of high school was Samuel Gompers, which was actually a refrigeration and mechanics to study
Mm,
refrigeration and mechanics. I was supposed to be a
okay.
repairman. When I talked to my professor about it, and now I after that experience, I'm like, I started looking at the movies differently. Real Genius, Weird Science. I like those movies. I seen those guys, and I said, I want to be that guy. I want to be a scientist. I want to be somebody that's studying like big things. And the guy, my circuit professor, he said to me, if you want to do that, this is not for you. You would need to be an engineer for that. And for that, you need to go to college. I can be a refrigeration mechanic and just finish high school. But if you want to be an engineer, you need to go to college. So it's like, oh, okay, so that's an engineer. And I was like, and I understood that. And I was like, as far as the difference between doing refrigeration mechanics, because like I don't want to fix somebody else's stuff. I want to make my own stuff. And that's that hustle. That's that like, you know what? Like, nah, I'm not fixing somebody else's stuff. I want to make this happen for me.
My own.
I want
Because
to make my
daddy
own. Yeah.
instilled that. Do for yourself,
That
make
that's
your
that's
own.
that's what it is. Yeah.
Right,
So
right. That's interesting, that's awesome. So, how did you end up becoming a civil engineer?
oh, that's a sorry. So from that ninth grade class, it was like my mantra. I was like, I'm going to be an engineer. I'm going to be an engineer. I'm going to be an engineer. And so I transferred my 10th grade Samuel Gompers. I was like, I gotta go. So, and I was able to transfer to Manhattan Center for Science and Math. Um, Research. They had a great math program, and I was like, okay, I'm going to get in there. They got me in because I did good in my English class at Gompers, and they said, okay, this guy's going to be a writer. I was like, okay, yeah, yeah, sure, I want to be a writer. That was not what I was going for. So I went to
So
Manhattan
the
Center.
author in you is coming out, so,
Yeah, that's
like,
it.
go ahead.
Yeah. So I joined a club. It's called Nesby Junior, and that's Saudi Black Engineers. It's a junior chapter, and I get more involved in those things. Long story short, I get into college doing. I was going to do electrical engineering, and electrical engineering is something because when while we're doing VCRs, doing the bootlegging, I remember the VCRs used to break, and my mother, it was just like, "How are you doing? How are we going to make the money?" These things push out $2,000 worth of product in so many hours. If you lose one VCR, that's $2,000 of the product, and it's $150 per VCR. It's like it's a commodity. She would have like 10 of them running at the same time, and one of them break. That's less product. So she had these broken VCRs. I was like, I want to fix it, and she let me take it apart and try to fix it. I never fixed a VCR, by the way, but so I went for electrical engineering with that in mind. But once I took my electrical engineering class, it was like, no, this is not it. So I end up taking a class for my black studies. Of course, college is going on. I'm doing some things that are wrong. I'm trying to get an idea of like, okay, this is life. What am I doing wrong? Stuff like that. And I end up taking a class in black studies called environmental racism, which talked about like
Mm,
how they site nuclear power plants or what have you, bridges they pass through towns. And so I was like, I don't. yes, there's a social justice part of it, but if I'm going to be an engineer, I want to be an engineer that's going to fix these things or it so that it doesn't have an impact. And so I wanted to do that. And so I ended up going towards, I wanted to do environmental engineering. So I put in for a transfer to the University of Buffalo. And I did make that transfer. However, the chemical part, the chemistry part I wasn't liking. So I ended up going into civil structural, which was in the same department. So, and then I had an internship where I worked for the DOT. Where my first internship, I worked for the Chelsea Piers, uh, put in the West Side Highway as an intern for DOT, and I liked the idea of just building something and be able to see it. And so I was like, and I'm making my own stuff. So I was an intern there, but the engineers got to put their names on some of the drawings, and I seen, okay, they got names on their drawings. That's the designer. That's the engineer. So I was like, okay, yeah, I want to be in this.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And so coming out of the poor family that some may perceive,
Yeah, somebody puts it.
coming out of Harlem, New York, you were able to get into this Nesby Junior program through a public school. You were able to also get an amazing internship I'll never forget. Your freshman year in college, you were able to work with Con Edison, or I think it was in high school.
High school.
Do you feel that that shaped your career?
Yeah, that absolutely did. That was again, that was that. Well, I'm going to be engineer, and that other variable, that other variable. I don't. Teacher said, "Hey, you'll be good for this," and brought it to me and said, "Hey, would you be interested in doing this?" I was like, "Yeah, I want to be an engineer, electrical engineer." And they said, "Okay, this is an internship for work for Con Edison." It was my junior year of high school that summer. That
Wow.
between junior and senior year that summer, I got to work for Con Edison down on 14th Street, Irving Place. I literally remember not even, okay, you say perceived poor. My belt didn't work.
Okay.
And I had a belt that was kind of hanging off like by the thread. I was like trying to
Okay.
get dressed to go to the first day. Had to get train fare. I was like, okay, mom, can I? And then like my first paycheck, I remember buying a belt. I remember like doing stuff. I remember like, yo, I want to get this done. I remember
Okay.
I bought a TV for our room so we could play video games in the room. It was crazy. It was
Wow.
like, yo,
With your
yeah, I'm
first
making
check,
money.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. It's been just an amazing conversation so far. So you worked at Con Edison. You've worked on some of the most iconic bridges and tunnels and trains all throughout the East. Could you name some of those things that you're on? I mean, I'm just so proud of you having your name on, say, the new One World Trade, which is just amazing.
Thank you. There were some GPS moments in all of that which you mentioned, and I'd have to stop you and not mention especially that variable, like God is like, "Hey, I got you." I write about it in the book that I'm making now. I'm writing now
Yes.
as far as, I wasn't supposed to get my master's degree.
Mm.
I actually got a job, and I wasn't supposed to be in civil structural engineering. I was actually going to lean more into construction management because that's what I was finishing with in my bachelor's degree. And I had an internship with a construction management firm. We were married, but she was pregnant. And the question was, I found a job. There was no jobs in Buffalo to get where I can work so she can finish school because she was 1 year behind me. She had to finish school. And it was this scripture. I was like, I had to find a job in Buffalo. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I had to find a job in Buffalo. And especially since Lisa was not hearing me moving to somewhere else and she had staying there and having her baby. She wasn't. She's Christian, but she can curse. She's from Queens. She's like she wasn't having that. And I was like, and I agreed. And it was like, how am I leave her alone? And it was that they offered me a job to move to the city. I was supposed to work for a construction project at Bellevue Hospital. And that for that fall, they offered me like 40, 50 grand a year. And it was like, no, this was a lot of money back then, trust me.
Yes, back then.
Yeah, back then it was like, wow, I'm gonna give this up. And it was like, because I need to stay with my wife. Like, how was that? And so I had my Bible in front of me. I'm literally looking for jobs on Monster.com while I'm finishing up the summer internship I had. I graduated with my bachelor's degree. I graduated, I'm in the summer internship. Lisa's got another year left. And I am in the computer lab of the place that I used to tutor in. And I have the Bible open, 1 Timothy 5:8. It's actually what I give to my kids. I'm giving their allowance now. It says that anyone who does not provide for their relatives and their family, especially their immediate household, has denied the Christian faith and is worse than an unbeliever. At that point in
Wow.
time, I was literally I had to transition. We grew up Muslim. I had to basically say and decide and like reconcile with different religions and processes. Okay, I'm going to be a Christian, not Muslim. I'm going to be a Christian, not a universal person, and I'm going to represent this thing. But here it is. It's saying, and I'm mulling on this scripture as I'm sitting there looking for jobs because I'm trusting God. I have a job lined up, but I need to give this up because one, I need to take care of my family. I love this woman. This woman I made her my wife. If I'm not taking care of her, this word is saying like, yo, what good is you being a Christian if you're not going to take care of your wife? If you're not going to
Mm,
take care of your future son. What are you? And it's like it says, it's especially immediate households had denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. So that's not taking care of your family was worse than somebody who doesn't even believe God. And I'm sitting here thinking most Christians are like, oh, we need to save everybody. Oh, save everybody. Everybody needs to be a Christian and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, there's a worse, the worst thing not taking care of your family. And it's like, why is that the worst thing? And it's
mm,
like, and it settled in my mind as far as interpreting that what Paul was trying to say to Timothy is like, why is that worse than an unbeliever? And I remember talking to God about that, and it was like, I provided for you in Christ. How could you not provide for your family? How could you not be in the struggle? This was a struggle. It was like, yo, this is a struggle for God. And it says, in due season, he prepared, he had this ready. There was a whole thing to get this thing called Christ ready. We're in the weekend right now. We're celebrating, commemorating the resurrection of Jesus Christ. It's like, this was not a little thing. And
no.
for you to actually say that to deny your family, okay, your funds or whatever, or support, and say you're not going to take your family, you're worse than somebody who doesn't even believe.
Wow.
I would rather you not believe than not take care of your family.
Wow.
And I was like, yo, and I remember looking, I was like, "Dag, yeah, like, I found a job. You know the job I found?
Tell me.
It was to be a parking attendant at Enterprise Rent a Car.
Wow.
I had a bachelor's degree in civil engineering, and I was about to like, yo, Lord, if this is what it has to be for me to take care of my family, Lord, I know you're gonna make a way. And I'm looking at a woman walks past the door at the time I'm applying. It says, Hashim, he's been looking for you. I don't know what she's talking about. She's been looking for me. Because the job I had literally was a construction inspection job of the dormitory that she works in at the basement level, where I would have to
Okay.
drive a golf cart around and inspect the workers that's going around. And I would sometimes go and pick up Subway sandwich from me and Lisa because she worked at housing, building and housing. And so I would go pick her up in the golf cart and I would go out to the lake that's right in front of her office. And it was funny because I knew that she was pregnant. So the car would be leaning towards her side after a while. I was like, okay. So I would go out there. So it's like, how are you looking for me? I'm like, what? What she's looking for me for? She put me on and said, we found a fellowship for you.
Okay.
So she found the fellowship and put me onto a fellowship. A fellowship is tuition and a stipend to go get my master's degree.
Wow.
When I tell you
Wow.
about this variable, I'm telling you,
GPS.
GPS
GPS.
is crazy. But what I decided to do in that decision that ah was that First Timothy 5:8. I think that put me on the. I was like, okay, God seen that, and said, I got you.
I hear that story, and I can't help but think you could have read that same scripture and said, "I have to provide for my family, so I have to go to New York."
No, but that's not provision. Money, like emotional,
So,
like
but
my wife
emotional
needed me
and
there.
physical support you valued
Yes,
more than
yeah,
the money, and that is a really big distinction that God put
yeah,
that on your heart, that the emotional and physical support was way more important than you going to chase the
yeah,
money and money back.
yeah. I think, yeah, yeah. That definitely was in my heart as far as the money can wait. The money is not
And
something to chase after.
that's not
Yeah,
it. Wow.
yes. I know.
And so
And
your
where did I learn
upcoming
that
book
from? Where did I learn that from? From that time in the trap house. Don't chase after the money. What do you value? And it was
because the money
yeah,
will come. And so now you got into the private sector,
not
eventually,
immediately.
and then
Eventually,
huh?
I first started out once I graduated my master's. Lisa had was getting her master's, so we stayed in Buffalo, and my professor hooked me up with a job. Actually, started my career at a with a firm in Buffalo, engineering and services firm in Buffalo, and then when we moved to New York, I worked with another firm in Long Island. And then I started with a temp agency at MTA, and I started to recognize this is actually a good place. Lisa's dad worked for the sanitation. She's like, "Yeah, you want to get a city job?" And I was like, "Okay, I try to get a city job." I did get the job, but ultimately I was like, "This is not enough." And so I wanted to leave MTA. I worked there for about 2 years. I was getting paid what have you, fine. But I said to Lisa, I was like, "This is not enough for me. I need to grow more." Because in the city job at that time, it was like a mentality of, "Okay, well, you got a job, just sit back and chill."
New York, that's what we were kind of like directed to
Yeah.
go get a city job, go take the test and get your
But
city job and you're
well,
good.
worse than that, get a city job and just sit there. It was just like,
Right,
I heard that and I was like, I can't stay here." And then Lisa
right.
was like, "No, but you had this a good pension or whatever, because this it's the only pension plan left anywhere." And it's like, yeah, but we did again, we still agree. Me and Lisa, we agreed, okay, go out in private for 10 years. I was doing the family plan. We had the children, so I had the health insurance and stuff through the city. She's like, go out private for 10 years. I'll work for the city for 10 years. So it's because she worked for, at the time, Kingsborough Community College. And so I'll do private for 10 years and then we'll switch up after 10 years. And that's actually how we did it. I worked for both private and public, and I was able to get a job back in public in the 11th year after the 11th year. So that
Mhm.
was the GPS that we set up for our household as far as like so that me and Lisa can like make sure that we're because careers and everything and we're fulfilled to make sure that's happening. So yeah.
Wow, that is phenomenal. The one thing that I can tell you is I've literally witnessed your entire career, just watching this lifestyle of having done the education. Robert Kiyosaki talks about the rich dad, poor dad. And he would consider his poor dad the professor. But in your case, I see, just your journey has been phenomenal in that you've had, like you said, with God there in between with your faith in between both you and your wife, directing you and your wife, and you directing your children as it says in scripture, that literally has led you to be a better parent. It's led you to make better decisions for your career. It's led both of you to just stay on a specific track that's lasted already 25 years and counting. You've got a book coming out. But before I go there, I'm really proud of the things you have your name on. Could you share? I know it was I-40 bridge in Florida. I know you're
Oh, Yeah, well, we had a yeah, I-40, the Florida DOT. My company at the time when I was in private, that 10, 11 years while I was in private, we did the coffer dams to build the foundations. That was a fun project. So that's there.
And you've done
Also,
one World
well,
Trade, you're working on the Second
One World Trade,
Avenue, train.
yeah, Second Avenue Subway, Fulton Street Transit Center, the Day Street Connector. Gave a I actually gave a talk on the Day Street Connector at a conference in Charlotte. And it was really funny because the Day Street Connector is actually just a people connector. After 9/11, it was an effort to bring back the economy of Lower Manhattan after 9/11. And so Fulton Street Transit Center was one of those things that had to happen. Not had to happen, but was seen as something that can happen because it collected so many train lines, 11 train lines, and what have you. Design that, I was actually in charge of designing one of the phases. I was put on as actually acting director for in the construction phase services and doing the RFIs and the finishing touches and doing the final drawings and what have you. And so I have one chapter I talk about this. Like there was one of the things that I had to do was check all the calculations. All the calculations that other engineers had made, I had to check them and make sure and go through that process. And I checked one calculation, and so checking the calculations, you have to rebuild or redesign it. And so I redesigned some things. There was one big thing that was like not good, and I had to redesign it. And I talk about it in my book about miracles and how God showed me like how miracles work. But that conference in Charlotte is what I was saying. It's basically to move 10 million people a day or something like that, or some crazy number. After I finished the presentation, I'm in the South. I remember the guy raised his hand and he said, "It was the only question I got. The only question." So this whole thing, concrete, steel, millions of dollars worth of work, time and everything. You built that for people? Like, yeah. It's like,
Well,
it's a difference between New York City and anywhere else in the world.
that is amazing, my goodness. Now, your book does not have a name yet, so I am going to encourage our audience to, in the comments, give us some names that this amazing book should be about. So it focuses on the 7% of elite scientists who still believe in a creator. Could you talk to me a little bit about that? Because why do you believe the modern church often pushes against science? And how do you help parents close the gap between their faith and technology for the next generation?
It's a great question. And yes, do welcome your um, feedback on possible titles of the book. I'm thinking apologetic proof theorems of a practicing engineer, but that might be too long. So
Okay.
basically, what you mentioned about the 7% is actually the problem statement that was actually presented by astrophysicist and science communicator Neil deGrasse Tyson. He says in a lot of his talks that he gives to people, uh, he wants to know not why 85% of the National Academy of Sciences is reject God. That's not interesting. Not they reject God. They're scientists. They're supposed their own. Actually, it's almost like they're supposed to. But so finishing that, so he wants to know not why 85% of the National Academies reject God. He wants to know why 15% don't. That 15% was actually from a 1933 study that he was quoting. However, that study was actually repeated in 1998. And so that number is actually less than 15% now. It's actually more like 7% that actually believe in a personal creator. So so phrase the question, he wants to know why 93% of the National Academy of Science, which is a set of distinguished scientists in the world, reject God. Why 7% still don't reject God? Why do 7% still believe in a personal God? And so I felt like I can answer that question just because I learned sciences. I learned I'm not a distinguished, I'm not a great scientist, I'm not a like Nobel Prize winner or anything, but I study it, and so I think my life can actually like attest to why 7% that 7% works. I actually also invoke a lot of the quotes and things of a lot of the engineers and scientists whose shoulders they stand on, like Sir Isaac Newton. Sir Isaac Newton was a Christian. Yeah,
Right.
he wrote the book. He invented calculus. He also wrote a book on the Book of Daniel and its connection to the Book of Revelations.
Einstein was also a
Einstein, yeah,
Christian.
he was a Jew. He
Yes.
was Jewish, but
Oh, he was Jewish? Okay, but he believed in a higher power.
he believed in the higher power. Bernoulli, Mendeleev,
Yes.
at the
Okay.
elemental table. Mendeleev was also a Christian. His mother was a Christian, and those things are there. He doesn't actually pose the question as a means to actually get an answer to help us out. He actually wants the idea is that if we can find out what's wrong with them, then we can be able to fix it everybody else.
Neil
What's
deGrasse
wrong with
Tyson
them?
is one of my favorites. Yes. You've got a chapter 3.14 is
Yeah,
fascinating, where you use the number pi to explain God's sovereignty.
yeah.
If NASA uses 9 to 10 digits of pi to triangulate planets, but the number itself is infinite and incomplete to man, what does that teach us about our own limited understanding of the complete God?
So it was a time. It's actually why I'm considering the title of apologetic proof theorems, because that's actually one of the things that I had to reconcile with. So we weren't always religious. So like, if I'm going to believe in God, how do I reconcile with the idea with he can't be measured? It's not something that we can prove. The idea that Neil deGrasse Tyson says why scientists should reject God is I'd the idea that things should be able to be proven as true. They should be able to be measured. There's no such thing as immeasurability. And so my thinking in college was, okay, well, how do I reconcile with that? And I remember, I think God was showing me, I think the circle came up in one of my classes. I think we was in my structures class, we were studying, I think, soil mechanics. It's a circle called Mohr's circle, and Mohr, Mohr. He developed this way to be able to basically define principal stresses and shear stresses using a circle, and it's tangential, what have you. But like, how is a circle able to do so many things? Circle represents so many things to a lot of different people and through the ages. And everybody's been trying to calculate what pi was. And like what pi is, if you're familiar with pi is actually the relationship between the circle's diameter and the circle. A circle is
Okay.
defined. It's great. We just launched a spaceship, Artemis 2. We just launched Artemis 2 just a couple days ago, 2 days ago, and like it has to go on the tilt, basically like beat Earth's gravity, but it goes on the tilt so that it comes along with the Earth's circumference and what have you. These are we're talking about thousands of miles. You know how fast the Earth is rotating?
I know it's fast, and it's so fast that we don't feel it.
You don't even feel it's like 1,000 miles per hour.
Yeah, we're like Horton is a Hugh on a dot.
Basically, that's a good analogy. It's great. The numbers are crazy. And when you think about the circle, when I was in college, I was taught about the circle and how it relates to that. That diameter is defined by the circle, and that relationship between the diameter of the circle and the circumference of a circle, it's a real thing. It's 3.14. That's a number that we've been using. Like how many diameters fit around the circle? 3.14. That's the number we were taught when we were in grade school. But then when
Okay.
I get to college, it was like 3.14159. It's like, wait, what happened? Because that number is actually not a complete number. It's like you can divide this anytime you divide a circle circumference by diameter, that relationship is not exactly 3.14. It's actually a number that stretches out very far. And people have been trying to solve that. Egyptian had just tried to solve that. If you look up Rhine's papyrus or Ames papyrus, or the Chinese have tried to solve it by basically like inscribing like uh 2,000, 24,000 sided polygons between each other and like trying to find the circle that's between them. The Chinese in India.
This reminds me of something I saw with Terrence Howard where he has like, has to do with the tree of life also.
The circle describes so many things, both real
Interesting.
and transcendental,
Yeah.
if I'm saying that right.
Right.
But why is that number now 3.14159? That number goes out. It's been calculated. Now that they have a way to calculate it, and now that we have computers, the record for that calculation is now out to a trillion digits. After
What?
the decimal point, it goes out to a trillion digits without ever repeating or closing. So
You know,
it
that's so
never
interesting.
actually has an end. So if you say how many times if you ask the question, how many times the diameter of the circle go around the circumference, and you try to fit that diameter around the circle, this because that relationship number never closes, there's going to always be an infinitesimal small gap. It will never close. It will never, it's not, well, not never. Until they find a closed number, it hasn't closed yet. And even if they find it's already out to a trillion digits, it's that fine tuned. But we just like close it and say, okay, we're done. But in truth, as far as theoretically, there's always going to be a gap. And depending on how big you're defining your triangulation or your circumference or what have you. So if you're just doing a bicycle wheel, 3.14, that might be fine. But if you're trying to cover the planetary systems, if you're going to Mars or going to the sun or going to Andromeda, and you happen to calculate like the gravitational pull of this is going to be pulling this around this way, and you're trying to calculate the curvatures around things, and you're using the number pi to do that, you have to have a much more fine-tuned definition of that relationship, because
Wow.
so that's why, like you said,
You
NASA
could
uses
end up
out
in
to
an
10 to
entirely
15
different
digits. Yeah,
wow, you can
because
add up
if
into
you're
a
short
whole
by
different
this,
galaxy.
yeah, you can end up spinning off for somewhere else, and this over there, just by being off by whatever point you want. But who defines that? Who has the authority to define like how much do you need to define that relationship? The truest authority is the end point of where you're trying to go. The circle is the only authority to define, like, okay, how far that diameter needs to be defined as.
I know that they have now agreed that there is a intelligent design.
Theory of intelligent design is a theoretical framework to basically put the framework around that there is a God, to identify with intelligent design. There is a community of believers that ascribe to an intelligent design. That part of it might be that 7%, but that 93% is not.
It's still not.
Still not.
That's
It's still
interesting.
not. Finish up on the circle. My conclusion for myself was to conclude that if the diameter cannot fully describe a circle, and this diameter is defined by the circle, then how can I, as a man who is defined by this God, describe or hold myself as being capable, no matter how I define other things around me, capable of defining the fullness of what created me? It's like it's the potter, the clay in the potter's his hand type of deal. Like, how can the clay tell the potter like what's good? So that's what I concluded with that, and that's what like led me to say, you know what, I can have questions about God, but to question God is kind of crazy. And as far as like, but to acknowledge His sovereignty, that He's in control, it is He who created us and not we ourselves. Um, that's a psalm actually. So I that's what I've been subscribed to, and that's what I've been able to live my life by, and I've seen God move in my life as I stick close to Him and stick close to His ways and want to search out those things.
Hashim, this has been a phenomenal conversation. I've got to have you back. You get that
Yeah,
book published. Get the book
yeah.
published, then you are gonna come right back here to Change and Triumph. I pray that you allow me to be the first one to interview you once that book gets published. It's been phenomenal. There's so much we didn't cover. There's
Oh
just
yeah, that's right.
we've got more. We've got more to talk about. So you have a phenomenal day, and thanks for being a guest on Change and Triumph.
All right. Thank you, and thank you for inviting me and having me.